I encourage you to dig deeper and learn more about the history of the indigenous peoples in the Philippines, and not just the Philippines, throughout the world.
Use that same platform to share the issues of the people.
Yes.
Because where else can this particular group of people get their issues shared?
Yes.
Right? So when you have the opportunity and the platform to share it, do it.
Yes. Mabuhay or in Kapampangan, luwid kayo. Welcome back to another reaction video. It's me, Kirby Araullo, your friendly Pinoy historian. And...
Yakupu Yi.
Kulang ba yun, Kirby? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Did you say it right?
Did I say it right?
Yi is back, and we're excited to react to the new music video coming out from Alamat. It's probably out by now that you're watching this. Music video of Maharani. Dakala salamat to Jason Paul Laksamana again for giving me a sneak peek of the music video. I actually skimmed through an earlier draft of the video, but I haven't seen the full final version of it. And we're excited. Are you excited? Yes. I'm excited.
Yes. Very excited. I've got a new favorite. I mean, not new favorite, but I've been eyeing this particular person. And Alamat, I think he's become my favorite. I believe, if it's correct, his name is Thomas or
Tomas.
Tomas. Yes, I've been eyeing him, so I've been really excited to see what's in for the new video.
Fun fact for those who are watching who are always asking me about Atom. The Tom in Atom is actually Tomas.
I
don't know if I can share that, but it should be public knowledge by now. Anyways, we're excited to watch the music video, so without further ado, let's hit play.
5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and
It's okay. We'll get it. We'll be better.
we'll get it right next time.
Yes.
Ooh, I love the makeup.
Hello there. Why are you so angry?
Oh, don't piss the side guy off.
Side guy.
Well, it looks like she got a boyfriend. With that face, I'll say yes. Oh, they're so happy together. Do you look at me like that? I like all the lighting.
PCN.
Oh yeah, reminds me of PCN. Ah, he's been crying for an hour now.
The whole day. Aww.
Poor guy. He only gets to grow in the show. Not in real life. Okay, what happened? Because there was no screen time for Tomas. Okay, that was not long enough.
I got a screen time for Taneo.
Okay, he is pretty though. I do like him as the main character in this music video. So even though, sorry, you didn't get the girl this time.
Like what she said, you'll get it right next time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thoughts, questions, concerns, comment down below. Okay, I do have a lot of thoughts about this music video. So Maharani is the title of the song. What do you think it means?
My girl, my girl, my girl. Sorry. Sorry, I was thinking of Taeyang. Okay. Is it?
Maharani is a title. It's actually not a name. It's a title of not of a song, but actually of a royal person. So Maharani is Sanskrit for great queen. It's usually given to the widow or the wife of a living Maharaja. Maharaja is the great king in the Hindu Buddhist traditions of Southeast Asia, of India. Again, so the title.
What happened?
Buffering. It's been a long week at work, so everything is buffering. But yeah, the title of Maharani and Maharaja, you know, these were titles from the Sanskrit language that were used in the Hindu cultures of India, and they became really popular during the British colonization of India. It's not. I'm not saying that they're not used before colonialism. Before colonialism, these titles were reserved for the highest of kings in India.
Okay.
You know, or queens. But when the British colonialism came, when they conquered India, it became like a token that they gave to a loyal prince or a royal petty king.
Like their little minions.
Yes, they elevate them and they become their favorite, and they give them this title, like you know, recognition as a great king. So for me, it kind of lost a lot of its deeper, big meaning.
Yeah, it's power basically.
Yeah, it's power. It just became like I mean, they still had power before colonialism. It had a lot of deeper meaning into it. Like they really looked up to the Maharaja as really the king of kings. It's not a title that you just throw easily. Maharaja is the male version of it, and the Maharani is usually the queen. And sometimes in English, they translate Maharaja as an emperor because it has that same level of power. And then, of course, Maharani is the empress. So in Southeast Asia, if I'm not mistaken, the title Maharaja was also used, but not as widely as India. Again, because of the Hindu-Buddhist influence of India through trade and cultural exchanges in Southeast Asia. For example, if I'm not mistaken, the title Maharaja was used as one of the formal titles of the emperor of the Majapahit Empire. I'm not sure if they use Maharani when it comes to the wife or the queen. Actually, before I forget, Maharani is not just the wife of the Maharaja. It's not just the widow of the Maharaja. Sometimes if a female ruler rules in her own right without a husband, without the need of a husband, you know, like she rules by herself, then she's also a Maharani. So it's not, you know,
it's not dependent on.
It's not dependent on the husband.
Okay.
It's not dependent on the guy. So that's what Maharani means. Again, they use it in Southeast Asia. I'm pretty sure our ancestors were familiar with the term because we have a lot of exchanges with them, and we actually use Raja to refer to our kings, to some of our kings, not all of them. But I'm not actually sure if we use Maharani. I haven't not encountered the term Maharani in our pre-colonial ancestors. But as far as I know, it was not used in the Philippines. Maybe later on in other parts of the Philippines, but from what I know, it hasn't been officially used in the Philippines until maybe later. I don't know. I don't know everything. I know a lot of things, but I don't know everything.
So, one question.
Yeah.
I noticed they mentioned Lakambini in the song. Is that the same thing as Marahani?
Maharani?
What? Did I say it wrong?
Yeah, you said Marahani.
Wait, how are we supposed to say it?
Maharani.
Oh, sorry. Maharani.
Yes.
Okay. I've switched it. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
That's understandable. No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, how do I explain this? Today, Filipinos use Lakambini as a female equivalent of a Lakan, and the general understanding of Filipinos today, you know, a lot of Filipinos understood Lakan and Lakambini as prince and princess. So Lakan is a male version, a prince, and Lakambini is a princess. But that's actually more of a modern misunderstanding of the original meanings of these words. One, a Lakan is actually not a prince. The thing is, there's no direct translations to titles between, you know, the English versions of it, the European versions of it, to the indigenous terms that we use in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia. I made a video about Lakan, Datu Raja, if you want to look it up, a few years ago. But generally speaking, today they think of Lakan as a prince and Lakambini as a princess, but that's wrong. If you think pre-colonially. Lakan itself is gender neutral. So Lakan is used by the Luzones people, the ancestors of now Kapampangan and a lot of Tagalog people. So traditionally, Lakan is gender neutral again, but it also doesn't mean prince. it could mean a prince in a way, but the general use of Lakan is to refer. Actually, there's two versions of Lakans, or not versions, but two uses of Lakans. One is to refer to the Diwatas, the gods and goddesses of our pre-colonial ancestors in Kapampangan culture, and then the other use of it is to their recognized descendants on Earth, so the ruling royal families. Because back then we have we have a similar concept. The Kamai people have the same concept. The Devarajas in Majapahit Empire, they have the same concept. Devarajas. Devarajas literally means God King. So these are the deified kings who, in our pre-colonial ancient traditions, they saw these kings or queens as descendants, direct descendants of the gods and goddesses, or the deities, the Diwatas in Kapampangan, or Diwata in Tagalog, same word. It's rooted in a lot of our indigenous and Hindu-Buddhist mythology. So the word in Lakan actually is indigenous. They don't use it anywhere else but the Luzones. As far as we know, it's only used amongst the Luzones. Unlike Datu, that is being used throughout Austronesian speaking world, you know. And Lakambini, on the other hand, now again we use it as a female version of Lakan. Again, if you look at our traditions, Lakan itself is gender neutral. There's no need for Lakambini to be a female version of it.
Right.
Which brings us to the root word of Lakambini. In Kapampangan mythology, Lakambini or Lakanbini is actually a goddess. She's the goddess of fertility. And it comes from the word Lakan, god, or goddess, and Bini. Bini is the seedling, the one you plant to plant rice, you know, or binhi in Tagalog for our Tagalog viewers. Lakambini comes from the title or the name that we used to refer to the god of fertility, Lakanbini. Eventually became Lakambini, and since usually Lakambini is depicted as a very sexual woman, then it became a term that was associated to the female gender. Even though technically Lakan itself is already gender neutral. There's no need for a female title. Which brings us back to us not using Maharani in the Philippines. In Southeast Asia, in a lot of cultures in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, in Luzon, in Patani, in other parts of Southeast Asia, they actually use Raja as also gender neutral. So Raja means king, but in many parts of Southeast Asia, whenever a female ruler ascends to the throne as the rightful queen, you know, she also uses the title Raja. She doesn't use a female equivalent. Even though they're familiar with Rani or Maharani, they don't use the female equivalent. So one example was Raja Ijao, one of the most powerful queens in Southeast Asian history from the Sultanate of Patani. She used the title Raja, even though usually today we think of Raja as a male version. But Southeast Asians, generally our indigenous Austronesian cultures, are very gender equal, fluid. So a lot of our terms are gender neutral. So even the title Raja was actually used gender neutrally. And also in the Philippines, an example I can think of is according to oral traditions, one of my ancestors, actually not just according to oral traditions, records. So I can trace my ancestry back all the way back to Lakandula and Raha Matanda, what Tagalog people, but the pronunciation is actually Raja, not Raha. So Raja Matanda and Lakandula, the brothers, their mom, according to oral traditions, is Ismeria, Isneria, there's different versions of their name. According to some oral traditions, when she ascended to the throne, when her husband died, her husband was the Raja. Raja Salalila was her husband. When Raja Salalila died, before their son, Raja Matanda, became the Raja of Manila, she became the successor first. And when she ruled as the ruler, the paramount queen of Manila, and the surrounding you know, territories that were under their domain, her title was actually Raja. From what we were told according to oral traditions. Sadly, a lot of these records have been lost to colonialism, to 500 years of colonialism. According to oral traditions, she also used the term Raja. So usually, actually, this is to go in a tangent now. We haven't even talked about a lot of the songs, or a lot of the part of the songs. Okay, long story short, Raja is often used by our pre-colonial rulers when they're dealing with outsiders, because it's a term that was understood throughout Southeast Asia, throughout India.
Okay, so Raja, Raja was used as a term, especially
when dealing with outsiders.
Because it's already a term that's understood within
throughout Southeast Asia. And you know, they use the same term in Indonesia now, in Cambodia, in Thailand, in India. Anyways, that's a different story. Back to Maharani and Lakambini and Lakan. In the song, they use Lakan again, like, you know, Lakambini, I wish that could be your Lakan. Which makes sense now in our common or our popular culture, pop culture in the Philippines, and a lot of people understood it, can understand it. But if you want want to be accurate,
Yeah.
that's kind of inaccurate. Or you can actually be like, hey, goddess of fertility, can I be your prince on earth?
Right.
But anyways, Lakambini is not necessarily the female version of Lakan as we understand it today. Because traditionally,
It's gender inclusive.
yep,
Yeah.
Lakan is, but not everybody again can use the title Lakan. Not
Okay.
all kings
Yeah.
can use the title Lakan. It's is imbued with mythology in a lot of the traditions that it was exclusively used by those who were descendants, or we don't know how they prove this, but those who were seen and understood and accepted as descendants of the Diwatas. Anyways, that's a lot of. If you want to learn more about the titles Lakan, Datu, Raja, it's all in this book, Tondo, Slavery, and the Revolt of the Lakans. There you go. This shirt. Lakan, there we go. I should have pointed it earlier. So see if I'm not sure you can see it. There you go. That's us. So if you want this shirt, I'm gonna release it again. I released it a few years ago, but I released it, but I didn't announce it. So now that I have another platform that I'm using for my merch, stay tuned for more Lakan and more fun merch.
Yes. Like I'm interested in the clothing that they're wearing.
Which part? There's a lot of
Both.
clothing.
Like there's the stuff in the beginning, like the ties.
Okay.
Like I don't know what.
The school uniform.
Yeah, the school uniform.
Okay.
And then okay.
That one
I mean, do these things mean anything? And is there more to it than what I'm actually seeing?
Yes. Knowing Alamat, there is
Yes.
more meaning to it
Yes,
than
that's-
what you
yeah,
see on the
yes.
surface. Okay, so the tie that you see in their traditional, not traditional, on their school uniform. In the Philippines, we wear school uniforms regardless, because here in the US, we only see school uniforms in private schools.
Yeah.
But in the Philippines, public or private, you wear school uniforms. And the uniform that they have here, they use a necktie with a special pattern that you see. And traditionally, it's a Maranao traditional weaving pattern. It's called a Langkit.
Okay.
Let me know to my Maranao friends if I said it right, Langkit. And usually these are decorative patterns, decorative weaving of multicolored, fabric that they use in their traditional clothing, like the Malong. I forgot the words. There are terms for these.
Okay.
I apologize to my friends in Lanao, in Mindanao, that I'm messing up right now, but it's a traditional Maranao garment
Okay.
weaving.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with the dance that they're using in this music video, which is
Okay.
singkil, which we can talk about more later. But we're talking about clothing right now. What else do you want to know about the clothing that they're wearing?
I mean, in the scene where they're on stage too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in.
The golden ones.
Yeah, the gold stuff.
You've seen these.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen them before, but I want to know, like, I guess history wise, or also how those are done. Like, I know a lot of Hmong stuff. Sorry, I'm throwing this in there, but a lot of our Hmong traditional textiles are like embroidered, stitching and all that. Nowadays, it's more modernized. Sometimes it's machine made.
Yeah.
So for these fabrics that I'm seeing, is it still like sticking to the traditional way of how they do it, or is it machine made? I mean, it doesn't look machine made from what I'm seeing, but I'm just curious for that one.
You've seen this in person. You have a
Yeah.
lot of malongs
Yeah.
from Mindanao, from my Maguindanaon friends. They're done in both, so they still weave it traditionally, but the mass-produced ones they also do it by machines now.
Okay, yeah.
So we still keep both.
Okay.
Luckily, so I thank all the culture bearers in Maguindanao, in Mindanao, for still keeping a tradition of weaving traditionally.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, for the mass-produced ones, they still do. They now do machine woven ones. A malong, for those who may not be familiar, is a tube. People say it's a tube skirt. It's not really just a skirt. A malong is a tube garment that you can wear as a skirt. You can wear as a hood, as a shawl, as a lot of things, as a sash,
Right.
as something you can carry your baby with. So malong, fun fact, malong is poetically known as the garment or the textile of life. Because someone wears it from the day they're born. They're
Right.
wrapped in a malong
Right.
until the day they die. They have malong. And again, malong is just the term for the tube
Tube garment.
garment,
Yeah.
not necessarily specific to a specific group in the Philippines.
Okay.
So we have a Maranao malong, which looks different than a Maguindanaon malong. The patterns we see on the stage that they're wearing, the gold and black ones, are actually from Maguindanao.
Okay.
So the first one that we saw, the ties, are from the Maranao people.
Okay.
And then the next one we see is the Maguindanaon malong, or not necessarily malong, but Inaul. There we go. That's the word. Inaul. So Inaul in Maguindanaon language it literally means to weave, to wove.
Okay.
Wove. To wove in.
To wove.
Yeah. To weave.
Okay.
Yeah, so Inaul just literally means to weave. And it's the same, or it's the cognate of the different terms in the Philippines, like inabel amongst the Ilocanos. In Kapampangan, to weave is abal, not abel. Abal. So inabal and habi in Tagalog. But anyways, Inaul means to weave. There's still a lot of interconnection between interweaving cultures of our ancestors that actually exist to this day that people are not familiar with. But anyways, Inaul is Maguindanaon and inabel is Ilocano. But in particular in this video, we see Inaul being worn as part of their garment or their modern version of it, their outfit in the theater stage. And then previously we see it as a school uniform.
Right.
Not it. We see a school uniform with the Maranao tie or necktie with the Maranao pattern known as Langkit. So those two are different cultures.
Okay.
Just want to make that clear for people that they're not the same culture.
Right.
They're next to each other.
Okay.
They have a lot of similarities.
Okay.
The Maranao people are the people of the Lanao, the
Okay.
lake, the Great Lake in Mindanao.
Okay.
Which is known as Lanao Lake, and Lanao literally means the lake.
Okay.
So it's just interesting. It's Lanao Lake. It's like lake.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Maranao people are the people of the lake.
Okay.
The surrounding lake.
Okay.
Similar to the Kapampangans as the people of the riverbanks. And then, of course, the Maguindanaon, next to the Maranao people, are known as the people of the floodplains. Floodplains.
Okay.
So the Maguindanaon, people of the floodplains, Maranao, people of the lake, Lanao. Similar
Okay.
concept to the Kapampangans, people of the riverbanks. And according to some oral traditions, the most widely accepted meaning of Sulu or Tausug are the people of the sea current. So a lot of our ancestors' names, or their ethnic names, are based on water.
I
If
was
you
gonna
notice.
say that. I was like, there's a theme here. It's
Yes.
water.
Yes.
Right. So water is life.
Yes.
Which
so
is
it's a concept that
Yes,
now we're
okay,
using to
okay.
protect our watersheds, our
and
water.
our indigenous peoples
Yes.
too. Okay.
So even in the Philippines, our indigenous ancestors, a lot of them saw water as sacred,
Yeah.
the giver of life.
Yeah.
And actually, even Luzon comes from the Kapampangan term lusong, Tagalog term lusong, which refers to the Manila Bay. It's also the direction of the water. If you want to learn more, I have a video about it. I'm not going to go into the tangent. But yes, there's also another theory about the term Luzon coming from the rice mortar, wherein they pound the rice. Because
Okay.
the shape of the Manila Bay looks like the rice mortar. So although I see the merit in the theory about Luzon coming from the word for the rice mortar, Lusong is the rice mortar, and the Lusong is the direction of the water. And if you look at the traditions, the oral traditions, the actual living cultures in the Philippines, a lot of our indigenous ethnic names are based on the water.
Water. Yeah. That's
know.
more likely.
Geographically
Right,
speaking, yes.
okay.
Culturally speaking,
Yeah.
it's based on geography,
Right.
not just because it looks like
Right.
a rice mortar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the dance. Let's talk about the dance that they're
Okay,
doing, that they're learning. What's the history behind that?
The dance that they're learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you see the bamboos, right?
Yes.
So it's similar to a lot of people are familiar with tinikling.
Right.
This dance is not tinikling.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me just make it clear for people who are not familiar with it. This dance is singkil, not tinikling. So singkil, the dance that they were doing in this music video, or they're learning at first and then they perform later on, is an indigenous Maranao dance of the Maranao people, the same people who, the Langkit, the Langkit patterns came
Okay.
from the Maranao. Singkil came from the Maranao people, the people of the lake. And the actual term for it is sayaw sa kasingkil. And it's a very famous dance now in the Philippines and across the world. When you're thinking of Filipino dances, traditional dances, they always think of two dances, although not as popular as tinikling. But in terms of a dance from Mindanao, singkil is the most famous one. So the romanticized version of the singkil we see in this video is the most popular one.
Okay.
The actual authentic singkil, the traditional indigenous singkil, looks different. One, the prince is not in the dance.
Okay.
So going back to romanticizing singkil in the modern version of it, we see the prince. The whole story about this is that the princess needed help to be saved.
A damsel in distress.
Yes, a damsel in distress, and the prince comes in to save her.
Right.
So the thing is, singkil is rooted in the longest epic in the Philippines that we know of, the Darangen. Darangen is the epic of the Maranao people, and literally, Darangen literally means to chant or to narrate a song. It's one of the longest epic in the world.
Okay.
And it's a collection of a lot of stories, a lot of old traditions of the Maranao people. And the specific one in Singkil is the story of Putri Gandingan. So in the epic, the princess was abducted by an evil Diwata or Diva God or evil spirit. The symbolism of the bamboo that she has to navigate is her navigating the falling trees in the forest because she's trying to escape the evil spirit. Which in the original epic and in the original dance, she was able to escape herself. The prince comes in the story later.
Okay.
Or before,
yeah.
I forgot. But he's not in that episode. He was not there to save her.
Right.
She saved herself.
You go, girl.
So that's my thing about Singkil, why I'm always passionate about the authentic version of Singkil,
Right,
because the
right.
romanticized version, you have the prince saving the day,
Right.
but in the original version, she saved herself.
Right. Right.
Yes, I'm having goosebumps.
Me too. It's like, you know, sorry. It's like, modern version, you don't need no man to save you.
Yes.
You can save yourself, girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the modern version of Singkil, the romanticized version of Singkil, in a way, I understand why it was created, because it was meant for a Western audience.
Yeah.
It was meant to introduce the Philippines to the
Right.
world. And it has its flaws. And it has a lot of criticisms. And you can look it up. There's a lot of criticisms of it. But my thing is that the sad reality is that while we know it's a romanticized version, the sad reality is that many people assume that the Bayanihan version, the popular version of the Singkil, is actually the authentic and the original one. Not the real one, which is the princess saving herself.
Right.
And this goes back to even, you know, even the clothing. If you notice in the video, Taneo has a nice body and he's wearing a vest which shows off his body and
Right,
arms and
right.
abs. But if you wanna, the prince does not exist in the indigenous version
Yeah,
of Singkil.
yeah,
But if you
yeah.
want to put him there, if you want to
Right.
put a Prince Bantugan in there,
He's got to be good to look at.
okay, that's true. But my point is, if you want to put the prince in there, the actual prince in the story,
Yeah.
that's not something he would wear. So usually when we see Singkil, I usually see a lot of the prince always, not always, but oftentimes wearing blue vest, which, to be honest, to me is very Aladdin. So traditionally, in Maranao culture, a warrior prince, for that matter, like Prince Bantugan in the story of Singkil, he would be wearing either yellow, which is the color of the sultan or the royalty, or red, the color of the warriors, not blue.
Well, if you think about it, if it's a romanticized version,
Yes.
I always kind of think of like romanticized versions always kind of stick to the binary as well.
Yes.
So it's mainly like, yeah, girls wear pink, whatever, lighter
Yeah.
colors, and then boys wear blue, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes,
so it
that's
could
true.
just be that too. That
It is mostly
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
to be honest, because now we associate blue with boys and pink with girls. Although, not that long ago, even in Western cultures, blue or baby blue was actually a female color and pink was a male color. But somehow, I forgot, there's a video on it on YouTube, a documentary about it, how it switched.
got it.
And interestingly, in the Maranao culture, purple or violet was actually associated for the princess. And if I'm not mistaken, it's called rambayong. That's the native indigenous term for purple. And it's usually used for princess. But again, a prince would either wear yellow or red or a combination of yellow and red. Or a combination of many colors, but the predominantly red or yellow.
Okay. Okay. I've been to a few PCNs at UC Davis.
Yes.
I guess from the dances that you've seen or that we've seen on stage, I don't think it reflects the authentic story.
Yes.
I think I remember it kind of following this romanticized version
Yes.
of a prince saving the princess.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I guess, and then I guess it goes to this idea too, is that because this version is more of a romanticized version, more well-known version, do you think that actually people should learn more of the authentic version when they're recreating these things? Because we're a new audience.
Yeah.
We're not Filipino. We're learning it for the first time. We don't want to learn wrong information either, right? But I guess what's your take on that?
Well, for me, I'm not necessarily saying that the romanticized version is wrong, but it's a romanticized modern version of the dance. What I want people to know is that there's an authentic version of the dance where
Right.
the princess saves herself, which is
Got it.
more true to the
Right.
story. So yeah, even as a child, you know, growing up, I've always seen Singkil being performed around me, and I felt a deeper connection to it. Actually, fun fact, I'm not that musical of a person. I can sing. I think I can sing when I really put my heart into it. But I cannot play an instrument. But the beat in Singkil, the traditional beat in Singkil, is a beat that I've always known. I don't know how I learned it,
Yeah.
but it's a beat that I do even in school when I'm bored with my fingers.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
it's ingrained in me. So fun fact, the
Yeah,
beat in
yeah.
Singkil, I can do that any time of the day.
Was that the beat at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, throughout the Singkil dance, but yeah, in
Oh,
the beginning they did it. But in the beginning they also showed that they messed up. And the beat is important because that's when you know
Yeah.
the bamboos are closing, and that's
Okay.
when you get off your feet
Okay.
so you don't get caught.
Uh-huh.
I also know the beat in Tinkil. I also know the beat in Tinikling really well, but in terms of, I just felt more connection with the Singkil beat. I think Singkil speaks to a deeper connection to our ancestors for me, as opposed to other dances. I'm not saying other dances are not authentic.
Yeah.
Because for me, there's a lot of forgotten indigenous, Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist traditions in the Philippines because of colonialism that we forgot that existed. That still exists, like Singkil. Yeah, Singkil is an indigenous expression of our indigenous art, our performing arts. And again, it's part of the famous, or it's based on the famous Darangen epic, which actually, here's the thing. Let me go in, not on a tangent, but I guess a tangent. But people today associate Singkil as a Muslim dance. More often than not, they refer to Singkil as a Muslim dance from the Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not entirely accurate. Because one, the Darangen epic is not Muslim. So the Darangen is actually the indigenous interpretation of the Hindu epics that we learned through trade, through cultural exchanges with India hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Right.
But the Maranao people today are Muslim. So in the 14th century, that's when Islam came to the Maranao people, and that's when it became associated with Muslims, because now the Maranao people who performed it, who are traditionally the owners of this tradition, are Muslim. But the dance itself is rooted before they became Muslim.
Okay.
And a lot of the version of Singkil, even the authentic version that I'm talking about, is based on what Singkil evolved into throughout the centuries of first indigenized Hindu Buddhist culture, and then the coming of Islam, and now in the modern Philippines. But yeah, for me, Singkil really speaks into the deeper consciousness of our people, the older cultures that we've forgotten.
Yeah.
Even Tinikling today is a colonial version of it. There's an indigenous version of it before colonialism. But sadly, we don't know how that looked like.
Right.
Now we see it as they're wearing Filipiniana, actually.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were something else before colonialism. But again, I just feel a deeper connection with Singkil. When you ask me if I prefer people to dance the modern version, authentic version, I don't have a preference, but what I really want people to know is to understand that there's actually a deeper story, a deeper, more authentic version of it that we should also appreciate.
Right.
But the good news is that there's a younger generation of Philam students, my former students in Davis, for example. Joey, shout out to Joey, shout out to Matthew, Espina Harris, shout out to Kimi. They were the choreographers of Singkil. I forgot what year that was.
A few years ago, before the pandemic.
2018, I think, or 2019. I forgot if it's 2019, 2019, I think.
Okay.
Anyways, so when they did it, they tried their best to immerse themselves in the culture of the authentic Singkil and tried their best to adapt their version of the modern Singkil closer and as close as they can do it to the authentic version of Singkil, down to the details of their outfits. They were able to incorporate as authentic of a Singkil they can in a modern version of it. So shout out to Joey, Matthew, Kimi, and the team. That's a huge group that made it possible. And Matthew, for example, really immersed himself in the cultures. He traveled to Mindanao, to Lanao, to Sulu, to really learn the dances from the culture bearers and respectfully, receive their blessing to perform it in the US.
Right.
But that's the thing too. A lot of people, sometimes they just learn the dance, but not really the meaning of it, not really the history of it, the roots of it. Sometimes they learn it from a video or from another choreographer. But for me, you should learn from the culture bearers.
Yeah.
Because they know how it should be done respectfully,
Right.
without romanticizing it. Or you can romanticize it in a way to make it more appealing to your modern audience. But you have to do it in a way that is respectful.
Yeah.
And you can only do that if you immerse yourself to these indigenous cultures that are still around.
Yeah.
Because although these cultures are Philippine culture, we associate with Filipino people, these indigenous people are still the owners, the custodians.
Yeah.
They own these cultures. They created these dances.
Right.
You should be respectful in performing it.
Yeah.
And you can only be respectful if you really immerse yourself with them. If you're, go to Mindanao.
Yeah.
Or whatever dance it is.
Right.
Luma dance from Mindanao, Ifugao people, you can, learn from them.
Yeah.
And do it, again, in a respectful way. Don't appropriate it. Because a lot of times, again, like in last video where we were talking about national costumes.
Right.
There are many Filipinos who appropriate culture from within the Philippines. That is still appropriation.
Right.
For me, if you want to perform these dances, learn from the culture bearers.
Yeah, because I think, again, with PCN, it's still a show,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah,
that's
at the end of the day, it's still a show.
Yeah, it's still a show versus when we're doing these dances or dances from indigenous groups.
It has a deeper meaning.
It has a deeper meaning.
Every step,
Yeah.
every detail has
Yeah.
a deeper meaning.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it has to do with their spirituality and their culture, their values, their customs.
Yeah.
From the video, I see that they're wearing the headdress.
Right.
The chicken, not chicken, a bird headdress. Sorry. Because people associate it with chicken.
Okay.
But the actual term is Sarimanok.
Okay.
Sarimanok, how to explain Sarimanok? It's a legendary bird, mythical bird from the Maranao traditions,
Okay.
indigenous traditions. And Sari, in Tagalog, in Kapampangan, in Maranao, it means assorted or various, because usually Sarimanok is depicted with various colors of feathers.
Okay.
And manok, in Tagalog today, we use it to mean chicken.
Okay.
Even in Kapampangan, manok is chicken.
Okay.
But generally, it's also a word for bird. Now it's used specifically chicken, but in
Yeah.
Maranao, they still use it to refer to birds.
Bird. Okay.
So Sarimanok is a beautiful, colorful bird, a legendary, mythical bird.
Yeah.
It has a lot of meaning in Maranao culture. I don't want to share something wrong, so let me know, my Maranao friends, in the comments below what Sarimanok really means. But it's been a traditional art of the Maranao people, associated with the Maranao people. You can see it in architecture,
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
patterns. But the headdress that we associate with singkil is actually part of the romanticized version of singkil. So traditionally, if you watch the traditional dancers or the indigenous
Yeah.
Maranao people do singkil, they don't wear the headdress of the Sarimanok,
Okay.
from what I know.
Okay.
So that's also part of romanticizing it,
Right.
because you see Sarimanok on top of roofs of the Torogan, the royal palaces. So I guess a creative person back in the 70s who or 60s or 70s, when they made a modern romanticized version, they turned that into a
Right.
headdress. But anyways, I don't know much about Maranao culture as such as I would love to. I just want to recognize that I'm not a Maranao culture bearer. I'm not a Maranao scholar. So if you are a Maranao scholar, culture bearer, or from the many provinces surrounding the Lake Lanao, let us know in the comments below what I missed or something
Yeah.
that you want to add about these.
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
things that you do know,
Yeah.
and there are
Yes.
things that we don't know. So
Speaking of the things I know. So we talk in a lot of my videos. I talk about syncretism, which is synchronizing, or
Okay.
putting together, interweaving different beliefs and cultures.
Yeah.
With your indigenous culture.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, a lot of like Christian traditions in Pampanga today actually have indigenous roots, actually have Muslim roots, actually has Hindu Buddhist roots.
Yeah.
But now we see it as a Christian tradition. Similar in Maranao culture. So, Sarimanok has indigenous roots. But over time, when Maranao people became Muslim, they syncretized it. And according to the the Muslim culture, when Muhammad first went to the heavens, he encountered a rooster. And when the Maranao people became Muslim, they saw that rooster as the same as the Sarimanok. So I just want to mention something
Yeah.
about syncretism.
Right.
So Southeast Asia has a lot of syncretism.
Yeah.
Sorry, our guinea pigs are
Those are
crying for food. So, okay, we're back. I'm back. I fed the girls, our guinea pigs. What are we talking about?
the bird.
The bird, yes, Sarimanok. Again, it's an indigenous, legendary, mythical bird from the indigenous Maranao culture. And syncretizing it with Islam, it became associated with the rooster that Muhammad saw when he ascended to the heavens. And now, it's a popular symbol of Philippine culture.
Yeah.
ABS-CBN used it back in the 90s as part of their logo. And a national artist, a great, amazing national artist, Abdul Mari Imao, Asia Imao, used it in a lot of his paintings. So now it became more popular in Filipino mass consciousness.
Got it.
But yeah, anyways, that's the Sarimanok bird.
Okay.
Again, traditionally, from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong to my Maranao friends, it's not part of the traditional headdress of the Maranao women, especially a princess dancing singkil, for example. Putri Gandingan, the princess in the epic that the singkil dance is made from, I have a whole chapter about her in my book, The Fierce Women of Southeast Asia.
She looks ready to
Yes.
cross the forest by herself.
Yes, so she saved herself. And if you get a copy of my book, you can also see pictures of the indigenous Maranao people. But anyways, yes, the authentic version of the singkil is that the princess did not need a prince to save her
Right.
from the evil spirits. She saved herself. And that was reflected in the authentic version of singkil, where they dance without the male
Yeah.
people. Or like, not the male. without the prince.
Without the prince
saving her,
them.
yes.
Okay.
And you've seen the prince with his kampilan. That's also an indigenous sword. I have a kampilan right here.
Yeah.
A kampilan is also associated with the Muslim people in the Philippines. But a kampilan, that type of sword was actually found in other parts of the Philippines as well.
Okay.
Kapampangans have kampilan, although we call it talibong.
Okay.
But that's another story. Let's not go into tangent, Kirby.
Okay, so had a question regarding the beat
Yes.
and the instruments that are used
Yeah.
in the video. And I know that with Alamat and stuff, I know they try to incorporate a lot of cultural stuff in their videos as well. So can you share more about that?
Of course.
This is a beauty pageant question.
Well, this is one of the things I love the most about Alamat is that they really incorporate a lot of the different indigenous Philippine cultures. Not just indigenous, but you know, Philippine cultures in their music, in their outfits, in their music videos.
Right.
And from the very beginning, their very first single, K-Bye, already had Kulintang music in there. Kulintang is a term that we use to refer to the traditional ancient gongs and ensemble of gongs and drums from Mindanao.
Okay.
But fun fact, Kulintang is related, of course, to a lot of the similar indigenous musical traditions throughout Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And actually, in Indonesia, they also have Kulintang. In Malaysia, Kulintangan.
Okay.
And the term Kulintang itself is used amongst the Maguindanaon people, in Mindanao, the Maranao people, and also in Ternate, in the Moluccas, in the Spice Islands, which is now part of Indonesia. So it's not just in the Philippines that we use this term. Nice. So it's a term that we use in different places throughout Southeast Asia, which again speaks to the deeper connections of our ancestors in the past.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out to Kulintonica, Ron Kerian, who does Kulintang in a more EDM, a fusion of Kulintang and EDM. So in a way, preserving the culture and adapting it to the modern times. So shout out to Kulintonica, one of my subscribers throughout these years. And also his wife is actually the creative mind behind Daily Malong, where you can find Malong and get your own Malong if you're from the US. But if you're from the Philippines, get it straight from the indigenous weavers in Mindanao. But Daily Malong also works closely with the culture bearers in Mindanao to produce the malongs that they sell in the US. So shout out to the Kerian family.
To close us out, let's talk about the whole
video.
Yeah, the whole video, the storyline. It's pretty straightforward for me.
Even without the translation.
Yeah, even without the translations, because if you follow the storylines about particularly wanting to be with someone, being their Lakan, but
lover.
yeah. But of course, like a lot of love triangle storylines, the girl goes back to her original partner, boyfriend, and he remains the friend zoned. He remains friend zoned. Yes. Well, hopefully they get together in the future because
can this be a series?
Yes, hopefully they get together in the future because they seem very happy together. I was rooting for them. Unfortunately, she goes back to her lover, even though it seems like he mistreats her.
Not seems, he was abusive.
Yes. Yeah, so he's like pushing her, kind of really probably questioning like why she's even hanging out with these guys like after school, right? Learning a dance. And then of course he comes back and he's like, hey, forgive me. Yeah. I'll be better. Come back. Yeah. And then she's like, okay, maybe you'll change. I'll give you another chance.
Okay, so I guess I want to ask you what your thoughts are, your feelings about the story that they showed. Because for those who may not know, Yi is actually a professional in terms of violence prevention, promoting healthy relationships. That was your work for many, many years as a survivor. And so can you tell us more about how healthy the relationship was and the whole story of this love triangle?
Right. Well, let me tell you, it wasn't healthy. from what the snippets that I saw, it's not healthy at all. I think when you have a partner that is one, jealous of you hanging out with anybody else besides them, that's a red flag, because as a partner, as a lover, you want that person to be able to trust you with whatever you're doing, right? And so if you're jealous of your partner when they're hanging out with somebody else, or they're spending more time with somebody else, like you should really think about where this jealousy comes from, because then we also have to think about what we can do as well when these feelings come up, right? So for me, in that scene of her, of him, like kind of pushing and actually physically pushing her to the side, like who knows? And then also in public, it's just that. What about behind the scenes? You know, what if he actually hurts her even more than what we're actually seeing? That again, it's in a lot of cases it's kind of like this too. Abusers kind of know. Well, actually, they don't kind of know. They know when to hurt and how to hurt without the public ever knowing. And they're also really good at isolating their victims of whoever they're abusing from their support system. So that's why victims of domestic violence, oftentimes they feel so alone, and they feel like they can't go get support because of all the shame, all the fear, and all the guilt, right? All the stigma relating to being in a very unhealthy relationship. And of course, there's also that part too of like, okay, well, yeah, maybe he can change. If I give him another chance, you know, if I go back to him, maybe I'll do a little bit better, so that he'll also treat me a little bit better. Maybe things will be different, but oftentimes it's not. And so what we call in the prevention field, we call it the cycle of violence. You know, there's a honeymoon phase of like, hey, we're in love. Everything's great. We're getting along so well. And then of course there's the tension that comes up after the honeymoon phase. It's the tension and the buildup, and it's all the little stuff that adds up to like the blowout or the explosion of when they actually physically hurt or do harm on their abuser, right? So and of course this cycle of violence, I'm simplifying in this way so that people understand it. It's a big cycle. It's really hard to break out of. That's why it's called a cycle. But of course, after the explosion. So you see that in the video where, you know, he pushes her away, she's crying, they kind of just go their separate ways without even really addressing it, right? That's the explosion. And the honeymoon phase again is when they come back towards the end. He's like, hey, forgive me, right? It'll be like the same, like how we had it, and it'll all be all good. And so she's like, okay, you know, and she goes back with him, right? So it's a whole cycle again. Oftentimes when people are in an abusive relationship, they'll often feel like, hey, I'm walking around eggshells. I'm in fear, either of my life or like in terms of what I'm doing will actually upset my partner, and I need to be really careful. So it doesn't matter actually what we say or do in this phase. The abuser will just what they call snap, right? But it's not really snapping. It's they know
they're conscious of
they're conscious of what they're doing, you know. And oftentimes abusers will also say, oh yeah, I snapped, that wasn't me, you know, like that's not who I am, you know who I am, right? And so of course when we think about all of the survivors of domestic violence too, that's why it's so important to create space for them to actually come forward and say, hey, you know what, I'm in a toxic relationship, I'm in an abusive relationship, and I need help right now. But then right now the reality is that there's so much stigma for women, not just women too.
I was about to say.
But you know, all survivors of domestic violence, nobody is like exempt from it. You know, it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're black or white.
Or successful.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Domestic violence actually impacts a lot of different people. For me, I'm like, well, I think that with this story, if we're just looking at surface level,
okay, good.
If we're just looking at surface level, it's like, yeah, this we're rooting for this side guy, and
don't call him side guy. He's the main guy in the story.
Okay, we're rooting for the main guy. Yes, we're rooting for the main guy to get the girl, right? But when I mean, again, our experiences and the work that we do, when we see little things like that in places like that, like the behaviors of what we've seen in the music video, it's hard to ignore. If we're able to shed light on it and actually think about, well, how does domestic violence look like? What are the signs? It'll actually help people understand it a little bit more versus like just thinking like, you know, it's just a physical abuse or it's, you know, one or the other. Because domestic violence, it comes in all forms, right? So it can be one thing or a combination of things, and we need to be able to recognize the signs. So
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I know, okay, maybe do you have anything to share?
No, you're the expert in this field. You train people in California to do prevention work. But okay, so I want to share things like, for example, you mentioned affects people. Successful people can
Yes.
be domestically violent, and it could also be
yes.
victims of domestic
Yes,
violence.
yes.
And again, it doesn't necessarily mean just the women.
Right.
Although, sadly, the majority is women
Right.
that we know.
Right.
But men can also be victims of,
Yes.
of an abusive relationship.
Yes.
I've been in abusive relationships in the past. It's a lot, to even accept yourself, to even understand. But like what you're saying, the more we understand it, the more we shed light to it, the better we can be at preventing it.
Correct.
The better signs we see if our friends are in an abusive
Right.
relationship,
Right.
if our siblings are in an abusive relationship, or if we are in an
Right.
abusive
Right.
relationships. But one thing I also want to share is that jealousy is a normal feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
But it depends on how you act on it.
Right.
If you dwell on it and
Right.
become violent,
Right.
that's toxic.
Right,
That's
right.
abusive.
Right.
But if you trust your partner, like what you said,
Yeah, what you said is true. Some jealousy, it's natural.
Yes.
It's natural, but the main feeling actually behind jealousy is insecurity.
yes.
Of like,
Yes.
hey, maybe I'm not able to provide something for my partner,
Yes.
and they're getting it from somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? And so this insecurity comes up, and when you actually act on those insecurities by trying to
Violent.
force and like control this person to be
Yes.
with you,
Being possessive.
yeah, being possessive, that's when it becomes an issue. But say for example, if there's some jealousy that does come up, and it's like, okay, you know what, like maybe I'll just work it out with her, talk
Yes.
to my partner about
Yes.
what it was, and it's cleared up,
Yeah.
then that's that, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to also being like trust is a big one.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I've never had Kirby like. I've never had you
What I
like.
do.
I've never had him question me like, oh, where the heck, where are you, or like, who are you hanging out with? Why are you hanging out with them? I thankfully I've never had that from him, because if I did, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here, because the thing is that I know better, and because that I've seen so many people like from broken relationships and come out of domestic violence, is that when you're trained in these when you're trained in this field, it's easier for you to actually catch these
Identify
things.
these things,
Yeah, and identify it. And for me, I'm like, well, yeah, I would never want myself to be in that position. But it's, the thing is that domestic violence is so complicated too, because again, the person who is being abused, they feel like, hey, I can probably change this person who's abusing me.
Yeah.
I can fix them. I can help them. I can save them too. So sometimes all those feelings come up when they're trying to leave or actually exit the abusive relationship. So it's a lot more complex than it is. But of course, again, the first thing that we should be doing is actually understand the signs, provide support, and then also look for resources that are able to help either a friend in need, help yourself, and also ask yourself, like, do you feel safe with your partner? Do you feel safe with your partner? Do you feel respected? Do you feel trusted? And if you don't, then maybe you should really dig into like, why not, right? And so that's what we want to have in a partner, is you feel safe, you feel trusted, and you feel like protected by them. You can talk to them about anything. So I'm very thankful that I can talk to Kirby about whatever, and things do come up too where I'm like, hey, this is like, for me, the important part is too, like, I have like my fuse too, my my anger too. I get upset at things. It's not like I don't, right? And healthy couples actually have disagreements. Yes, but of course the goal is to always work it out without being violent. That's the biggest part, and not controlling them to do whatever it is that you want. So
don't gaslight them.
And don't gaslight them either. And so that's my 2 cents on the entire storyline.
Sorry.
And I mean, and again, understanding what a healthy relationship looks like. Because again, it looks like she's more healthy with
Taneo,
the main guy, and I'm like, they're smiling, they're dancing together.
The fans are supportive.
They have shared passions like dance, right? And so those things are important. Well,
one thing I also want to mention that was also in the story is in the song itself. The main guy in the story, not necessarily Taneo, but the lyrics, the storyline, he cares deeply about the girl, but in a way, you can kind of get this sense that he wants to save her from him. And that's a noble thing to feel, but at the same time, I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes they don't need saving from another person.
Right.
But that person can help them be empowered to save themselves from this relationship.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that for you guys out there who sees things like this, don't come in there being the savior. Don't come in like, I want to be the hero. I want to save her from that abuse.
If I don't save them, then who will?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to understand, you have to trust them that they can also save themselves.
That's true.
So I just want to share that you know, because sometimes we have this savior complex where we
Right.
want to save that person,
Right.
that damsel in distress.
Right.
But in a way, sometimes when we do it, when people do it,
Yeah,
they
that's
end
true.
up being toxic themselves.
Right. I agree.
So too much of anything is toxic.
That's true. Yeah, that is really true. And again, working with survivors, we don't force them to do anything. You know, we just say, hey, this is the situation that we're in. These are the resources for you. These are your options. If you choose, you know, what from the options, whatever it is that you want to do, we will support you, right? And there's no like wrong decision of the next steps of what you want to do after that. Sometimes people are planning like how to actually safely exit a relationship.
You can't just leave sometimes.
Right.
Maybe more often than not, you can't really leave.
Yeah, you can't just
It's
leave.
more dangerous to just bounce.
Right. And again, I mean, we think about like the average of when people, how many times people try to leave, it's about 7 times. So 7 times
This is based on
on
research.
average, right? Someone will try to leave an abusive relationship. And once they make that final leave, that leave is actually the most dangerous time for a survivor or for a victim of domestic violence, right? So it's not as simple as just like, hey, get out of the relationship now. And sometimes people don't have the resources and all that, all the support that they need in order to get out safely either. So there's a lot of stuff in that could be for another video, but just wanted to put that out there because these issues are happening in our communities. And again, doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, how rich or how poor you are, it happens everywhere. How powerful you are, happens everywhere. So I just want to put that out there.
And again, men can also be victims of domestic violence.
Correct.
From fellow men or
Right.
from women.
Correct.
Or from other, you know,
Yes.
identities. But so okay, let me backtrack. Yes, men can also be victims of domestic violence.
Yes.
But if you look at the history of domestic violence, a lot of it is anchored on a patriarchal society.
Right.
In many of the matriarchal societies, there are matriarchal societies in the world. There's less violence. You know. So in a lot of indigenous Philippine cultures before colonialism, a lot of them are matriarchal. A lot of them were, if not matriarchal, at least egalitarian, where gender was not that big of a deal. Right? Like I said, the terms Lakan, for example, is gender neutral.
Right.
A female daughter or a female leader can ascend to the highest throne and title without needing a man. Right?
Yes.
So it's based on merit. So my point is, in an egalitarian society, in a matriarchal society, there's actually less domestic violence. There's less of these violence that we see that is often anchored on patriarchy in a patriarchal society. And sad to say, the Philippine society today is very much patriarchal because of colonialism.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more like binary roles that people are supposed to fit in as well, right? So there are those unrealistic expectations on women and on men, right?
Queer people.
Yeah, we have to be able to kind of think about how it is that we want to be in a relationship too. I think that's probably the biggest piece is through this this music video is that, okay, yeah, well, how can you be in a relationship that's not toxic? And also for men, how do you combat toxic masculinity? You know, because, you know, let's be real, there are actually very toxic expectations for men to be a certain way too. That's where toxic masculinity comes from because they feel like society needs them to be in a certain way. If they don't fit this mold, then they're not man enough, right?
And sometimes they try to fit into that role and expect something like a reward from it.
Right.
And this is related to mass shootings in the US, for example. Data shows that mass shootings in the US are perpetrated by men. Toxic masculinity is at the core of these mass shootings. And oftentimes, it's because of that expectations, you know, what they expect from society or disappointments from society.
I'm saying what you mentioned earlier is that actually when we empower people to get out by themselves, well, actually that probably is the best way to get out so that they're aware of the situation that they're in and they can do something about it. So going back to the epic as well, the authentic, the traditional, singkil, the epic,
the Darangen,
the dance, the girl gets out by herself. You know.
So we're not saying that Putri Gandingan was in an abusive relationship. Well, the thing is, she was abducted by an evil spirit, brought into the jungle, and she tried to escape the evil spirit in the jungle. And the evil spirit started like dropping trees on her and stuff, and she navigated it really beautifully, you know, and escape and save herself. But I get what you're trying to say.
We don't need no man to come save us. Then going back to the storylines of the dance.
Yes.
What we need probably to see more is dances of women being empowered and saving themselves, choosing themselves. And, you know, I mean, that would be a great dance I'd like to see too.
Yeah. And that's the original Singkil. She saved herself. But yeah, she did not wait for the prince to save her in the original story. Going back to the whole culture part.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for, by the way, for sharing, for educating my viewers on a healthy relationship, on domestic abuse and violence. That's really needed conversation, and stay tuned. She's planning on a podcast. Soon. And a book in the future. Anyways, back to the culture or the performances.
Yeah.
One thing I want people, my viewers, to keep in mind, Filipinos or people to watching this this video to keep in mind, is that when you perform these dances, again, I told you earlier, you know, I'd like for you to learn from the culture bearers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even if you don't learn from the culture bearers, when you perform these dances, what I want people to keep in mind is, you know, recognizing the history of the people who created the dance.
Yeah.
These are not just dances or costumes that you put on.
Yeah.
Sadly, people just use it as a costume.
Yeah.
It's a token, you know, to be more ethnic, you know. But recognizing the history behind these dances, behind the people performing these dances or who created these dances. For example, the Maranao people of Mindanao have been one of the most marginalized and exploited people in the history in the history of the Philippines, especially during the American colonization of the Philippines, occupation of the Philippines. They've been disenfranchised in Mindanao itself, in their own homeland, in their ancestral land. To this day, there's violence that's happening and stereotypes and stigmas against people, against Muslims in Mindanao. So for me, performing these dances, if you want to perform these dances from another culture that's not your own, is for you to really take it to your heart to pay tribute to the people who created the dance. And to remember and keep in mind that these people are not just people from the past.
Yeah.
They exist.
Right now, yeah.
The Lumad people exist.
Yeah, yeah.
They're still being exploited after hundreds of years. So if you want to perform Lumad dance or Singkil, Maranao dance, pay tribute to the people. Learn their actual history.
Yeah.
Learn their experiences. Learn what they're experiencing today, their struggles today.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like the best way to honor them through the dances that you're doing, like that you're learning.
Yeah. So for me, don't just dance. Don't just put on the costumes.
Yeah.
They're not even costumes.
Yeah.
If you want to be more respectful, wear the actual regalia.
Yeah.
The actual traditional clothing. But of course, get their blessing. But my point is, don't just perform it just for the sake of performing something cultural.
Right.
What my thing is that, what are you going to do after you perform it?
Right.
For me, take action.
Yeah.
Learn about their issues, learn about their struggles,
Yeah.
and find a way to support them beyond what we see on the surface.
Right.
So yeah, don't just take away or take a culture for yourself to feel better about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not do something about the people who created the culture. Again, they're still around.
Right. Yeah, I think with learning any dance that you're not familiar with, and
Or
a dance
that
a dance that's not your own, it's definitely respectful to learn the issues of the people and their dance of what you're doing. You know, when you put on a show, you should think that it's more than just a show. The dance is a dance, but the dance you should have understanding of this actually tells a story of a people and the people's culture and history and traditions.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, that's key point.
And I was like, blah. I was actually gonna say that more often than not, if you think about it, these dances are reflections of their experiences in the past or the present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So if you're performing their dances, reflect on their experiences today.
Right.
Because sadly, a lot of these indigenous people are still being marginalized, exploited, and kicked out of their ancestral land. Just because they happen to live in a land abundant with natural resources and minerals that all these companies want to take over for profit.
Right.
You know? So yeah, take action, learn more, dig deeper. Don't just perform just to perform.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember what Singkil means now. Forgot earlier. But it's the anklet, the little bells in the anklet.
Okay.
That,
what we hear?
Yeah, that you hear in the beginning of the Singkil, or throughout the Singkil, but
Yeah.
you know, in the beginning they like do the steps, like what Francis did for Singkil.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, my viewers, I encourage you, well, you're watching my video, so I hope that you're actually digging deeper. So I encourage you to, you know, if this is the first time you're watching this video, or my videos, I encourage you to dig deeper and learn more about the history of the indigenous peoples in the Philippines, and not just the Philippines, throughout the world. And if you're Filipino, you know, and even if you're we're going back to the, you know, performing dances that are not from your culture. Even if you're from that culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So if you're from that culture and you want to dance your cultural dances and traditions, reflect on your people's experiences too.
My addition to that is that when you dance, when you have a platform
Yes.
to show that dance,
To share culture.
to share the culture, use that same platform to share the issues of the people.
Yes.
Because where else can this particular group of people get their issues shared?
Yes.
Right? So when you have the opportunity and the platform to share it, do it.
Yes.
You know?
You're gonna share the dance anyway.
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
raise awareness about the
Yeah.
issues. And I want to give a shout out to all of the dance troops, Philan dance troupe that are actually doing this. There's a lot of them are actually, sadly, not as many as I would like to, but there's many of them who are actually doing this.
Alamat is really good
Yes.
at incorporating
Yeah.
these cultural dances, traditions, a lot of like
Yeah.
cultural contexts into their music video. It's important, like even as an artist, when as an artist, if you're performing these things, you know, it's important to understand the issues so that if things do come up, right, you have a you have a stance on things, you know. You can actually, maybe if you have more resources than certain people, like you can actually help in the ways that you can as well. So again, as an artist, you don't dance just to dance.
Yeah.
You don't perform just to perform. It has to go beyond that.
Yes.
That's my piece.
So yeah, that's actually a great point. So I just want to give a shout out to Alamat and thank you to Alamat for using their platform, your platform, to raise awareness on a lot of you know, history, culture of the Filipino people. So dakala salamat, daghang salamat to all of you.
Tomas. Bias.
Tomas is from Bicol. Can you say just mabalos? That's thank you in Bicol.
Wait, hold on. Say that
Just
again.
mabalos.
Just bubblos.
Mabalos. Just mabalos.
Just mabalos. Just mabalos. Tomas. Bias.
And today's shout out goes to the following retweets. So there's a lot of you, dozens and dozens of retweets. So now I'm confused. So I did randomly pick 12 out of the dozens of retweets. So first, shout out to @Akalingwan. For those who do not speak Kapampangan, Akalingwan means forgotten. So I'm not sure why you chose this name, but shout out to Akalingwan.
You're not forgotten.
Yes, you're the first one. And shout out to @Pipaptita, one of my loyal viewers and subscribers. Shout out to @Pipaptita. Shout out to @said_Pipaptito. Shout out to @Netflix_. Sometimes I see Netflix as Netflix. Anyway, shout out to Meow Meow. Did I say that right? Let me know, Meow Meows. Shout out to you. Shout out to @Magilo Mayari, the goddess, the moon deity. So check out my video, Philip's reaction to Philip's Bulan, to learn more about the moon deities of the Philippines. Shout out to @Talampad. Shout out to @Magilo_Adi, @Magilo_Z. Shout out to Devata4162176. Shout out to you. Did I mess that?
413.
Oh yeah. Shout out to @Devata413622176. Shout out to @Magilo_Paula or Paula, and shout out to @Laibunag. Laibunag. I hope I said it right. And of course, special thanks and special shout out to my patrons who have been supportive of my channel throughout these years, especially to these two patrons who are both Magilus themselves. Shout out to Elise Punsalan and to Roseanne Chavez. Roseanne is actually a friend of mine from college, and we studied anthropology together in Davis. So shout out to both of you. Dakala salamat for all your love and support. Dakala salamat for all your love and support. So for those who want to help me make my videos like this, please be my patron on Patreon or be a member of my YouTube channel once it's set up, or get copies of any of my books, coloring books, and ebooks, or any of the merch link down below, which is coming soon, like this shirt. And that is it for us today. So if you like this video or learn a thing or two, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. And again, if you learn a thing or two, like this video, share this video so more people can learn more about these topics that we talk about. And yeah, please hit subscribe. Thank you. Dakala salamat, dakal pong salamat, Diyos mabalos, daghang salamat, shukran abenal, terima kasih. Say it in Hmong, please.
Ocha.
Okay. See you next time. Tagalog kita-kita ng Kapampangan. Mikitix.